ultralight fused cell EPS blanks, web fused carbon deck reinforcements, unique longitudinal and torsional flex pattern, 45-degree X glass, optically brightened epoxy resin. What does this all mean? Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Forman, and this is a lost carbon wrap surfboard. We're here today to break down the tech and put it through a feeling. So you got a food processor, we're gonna put it through a feeling processor and teach you what the tech is behind carbon wrap surfboards from Lost. Now, a give and take situation that's going on with building surfboards is lighter surfboards feel really, really good. Lighter surfboards are easier to throw around in turns, like all your turns become a lot quicker and more exact. They're easier to whip around through the turns just because you're swinging less weight through the turns. When you take a standard PU poly board and you build it lighter to get that feeling, the other great thing is that also the board becomes more flexible because you're building it with less fiberglass and the board bends and rebounds out of the turn better. So not only are you getting a lighter board that whips through those turns faster, but you're also getting to load and unload it out of the turns, and it gives you spring out of the turns. The drawback when you make them that light is they don't last. So if you look at all the pros that you see, go through 30, 40, 50, 100 boards a year, it's because they're building them as light as they can possibly build them to get that reaction time in the turns and to get the spring out of the turns. But they're built so light that the decks cave in and then eventually they break in half. So the feeling that you get in that type of board is like nothing else. If you ever ride one, that's all you want to have. The opposite is that you build it for strength and you put those additional layers of fiberglass on it, then the board is stronger against caving in and breaking, but it's also heavy, so you lose that quick reaction time in the turns, and then you also lose the springing in and out of the turns. And it ends up basically feeling like a heavy dead brick. So where's the middle ground, or how do you achieve like that ultra sexy feeling without having the board be disposable? That's the aim at what they're trying to do with Lost Carbon Wrap, and they've actually done a really good job of doing it. This board starts out with a stringerless EPS blank. EPS is lighter than PU foam, and so you automatically start out with a core that's a lot lighter, and that's any weight savings is going to be helpful. Also, stringerless allows the board to bend and rebound quicker. So if you've ever ridden a stringerless board before, they're great, especially for creating like that push and rebound effect on that sexy feeling surfboard. Having a stringerless board is a great core for that board. Beyond that, what Lost does is, this is where all the ultra tech comes in. They have the carbon wrap, which is on the bottom, going from the nose down and then spreading apart, going around the rail on both sides, and then back here in the tail, right under where your heels would go. What this does a few different things. One, it strengthens the board much like a stringer would, but it does it rather than running it just straight down the middle, where the board, if you do try and break a board, the board's going to break and try and break the stringer. And so this does a little bit of that, but it also strategically and geometrically, it's placed in a way that it works with the torsional twisting and flexing of the board, where a stringer straight down the middle really doesn't do that. This is in the right position to enhance that twist and also propel the board out of that flexing. And so it goes out to here on the heels, and then where it wraps around to the deck is also underneath the exact same place where your heel is going to be on the board, and so it reinforces the heel area of the deck where your feet are, and acts much like a carbon tail patch or a polypropylene tail patch would underneath the heel of your foot. So when it's doing that, it also creates, when you're driving off of that back foot, you can also engage that whole system much better because this is tied into this. So it's not like you're pushing on this with this not being here, hoping to engage this. It's all connected. So when you're driving the board and loading it up, it's springing, it's loading up and springing out of that carbon strip. On the deck, if you don't have reinforcement and you have a stringerless board, you're going to have a situation where you're going to get a lot of caving in right here. So they reinforce the deck with a carbon strip, and then they taper it off nice to a fine point here in the front and a fine point here in the back. The reason it's tapered off like that is if you just have a square chop here and a square chop here, you're going to have kinks in the flex pattern. And this allows it to taper out a normal flex pattern throughout the whole board. And then also, wherever your front foot would be, it gives you more reinforcement, but also allows you to get slight impressions on the deck or impressions on the deck with your toes and your heels, so you have that extra grip on the board. The consensus is you don't want to build the deck so strong that you get no impressions on it, because then you don't have that nice confident feeling of putting your foot in that dent. Heel dents are basically good. You want to have them. You don't want to have them so deep that the board falls apart, but you do want to have them so you have that extra grip and you have that confidence that you're in the right place on the board. So this still allows you to get that dent on both sides of this to leverage off of that extra traction, but reinforces the deck of the board and the flex pattern, and then tapers it out nicely. The other thing that's going on here that's not on a standard board is the weave of fiberglass that Loss uses on this board. And it's what's called a 45-degree angle rather than a 90-degree angle. It has 3 different threads running in the board, and when you look at it really closely, you can see it has threads running this way, the length of the board, but it also has 45s running this way, the whole length of the board. What that's doing is allowing the board to utilize what's going on in the torsional flex with the carbon wrap, but it's also, because of the 45s, it's when you push on your toes or push on your heels, rather than just the threads going this way, they're also going this way, which allows you to really load up that rail and give you a little bit longer rail line on the board for loading up and unloading. So it's basically just giving you a longer edge to push off of when you're surfing the board and trying to generate speed. This construction is going to be available or it is available in a wide range of boards. You're typically going to see it in the groveler construction up through better wave construction. You're not going to see it in big wave boards, because typically in those boards, having the board be a mid-weight or even a heavier weight is an advantage, just to get you down the face of the wave with all the wind that's coming up it. But in anything like mid-range and smaller wave-oriented, you are going to see lighter weight boards having advantage. And so in Loss boards, something like a puddle jumper, a V3 rocket, a baby buggy, a quiver killer, that's the sweet spot for where this construction is going to work. So again, the end product ends up being like this board right here it's a 511 standard puddle jumper, the squash tail, when this is the size that I ride for groveling, shortboard surfing. And this board in standard PU, like double 4, deck patch, single 4, PU core, polyester resin, it gets to be a pretty substantial board as far as the weight of the board. And again, once you've ridden a really light board, it's like, I just want the board to be really light, really light. This gives you that really light, springy, alive feeling without the board falling apart. The other thing that's important to mention, with epoxy resin, this is the type of resin that's on this board, is whenever you say epoxy resin, the board automatically just falls into the epoxy cloud of confusion, because everybody thinks epoxy is more durable. You could drop it in the parking lot. You could drag it behind your car. It's a great travel board. You could bounce it off the boat. There's a million different things about epoxy. It just basically falls into this foggy area of confusion known as the epoxy cloud of confusion. Epoxy resin is stronger than polyester resin in that you can bend it further before it starts cracking, and every one of those little cracks is basically your board breaking down. But it's just the resin in the board. There's a bunch of other materials, obviously, that we just went through that are in the board. And the cloud of confusion gets created because everybody thinks that a board that is made with epoxy resin, any of those is the same. And you have boards from like plastic fun boards that have some derivative of epoxy resin to you have composite sandwich boards that are made with some epoxy resin. You have plant-based epoxy resins. You have boat building epoxy resins. But all of those resins are just one ingredient in the whole board or in the whole boat or the whole whatever's being made. This resin, and when they say it's optically brightened, meaning you're getting a whiter board that'll stay whiter longer, is only one ingredient in this board, and in this specific application, the epoxy resin helps it bend further and rebound more without cracking like a polyboard would, and also helps the whole product be lighter. Another reason they have to use epoxy resin is when you have an EPS blank, if you use polyester resin, you'll melt the blank. So it's right off the bat, they have to use epoxy resin with this blank. The other thing is that the durability of this board, again, like under the cloud of confusion, this board becomes like I don't even need a board bag for it. I can just beat it up. We call it, you have like your strength of breaking the board, and then you also have your strength of, dropping the board in the parking lot. This board against breaking, it's really strong. This board against dropping it in the parking lot, probably in the same ballpark as a PU poly board. So you don't want to confuse it with an epoxy sandwich board or composite board that specifically have been designed for that durability being the primary thing. This board has been designed, the performance and the lightweight and the spring being the primary focus of the board. So a little bit of tech on the epoxy cloud of confusion. So wrapping it up, the Lost Carbon Wrap construction, bottom line is it makes a light board with a significantly noticeable added propulsion out of the turns. Like you can really load the board up and spring it out of the turns. It basically makes your surfing faster. And it gives you a lighter weight board in that small to mid-size wave range that gives you a lighter board that typically would have only been reserved for throwaway boards, but puts it into a board that will last for a while. So definitely worth checking out, and it's the rage. It's definitely, it's thinking outside the box, and it's a great product. And right now available, like we said, in the puddle jumper, V3 rockets, baby buggies, quiver killers, and new models to be released soon. Also, you can get any board that Lost makes in this construction via custom order, which we can help you with as well. If you have any other questions about the Lost Carbon Wrap construction, you can give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000, or you can check it out online on our website for a complete tech breakdown at realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in.